Okay, all right, everyone. So let's go ahead and continue with chapter 11. We left off on we were discussing county governments here, so we're going to finish off the last portion of county governments, and then we'll get started with city government here as well. Okay, let's see. All right. Okay, so this is where we left off here. So just to kind of recap a little bit, everyone. Last time in our discussion, we were talking about county government, and we were talking about the major components of county government. So we were talking about, let's kind of just recap a little bit. So keep in mind that we were talking about the county judge as well as the four commissioners within the four precincts within the county, and of course we have all of these other county level positions that we had. Remember, we talked about how that one of the major responsibilities that the county has is the maintenance of roads, as well as you've got your health officers, and then your home demonstration and county agriculture agent. These of course are working in conjunction with Texas A&M, and they assist with rural residents of the counties with their farming and ranch lands, as well as the houses that are on the farms, right? So that's who those agents are. So, but with that being said, and of course, we also talked a little bit about the different listings of the different county offices here. So keep in mind that these, we have these county positions. Most of these are county-wide, but with the commissioners court, of course, we have the county commissioners that are elected through the various precincts of the counties here. So let's talk a little bit about some of the criticisms and issues with county government. So one of the issues, of course, is partisanship, right? So party labels often make little difference in administration of duties, right? So the book talks about that, for all of these county positions, that there is the need for these county level elected officials to run under political parties. So whether it's the county judge, whether it's the county commissioners, the sheriff, the district clerks, the county clerks, all these people have to run as members of political parties. Now, some of these positions are going to require more being engaged in making political decisions. Like for sure, the county judge definitely is a position that is going to be very political because of the fact that they are the chief administrator of the county, right? Think of them as kind of like the governor of the county, right? So it makes sense that the county judge would definitely need to run as a member of a political party, because their job is going to entail making political decisions. But what about some of these other positions, like the county clerk or the district clerk? These are basically the top administrators when it comes to documentation and paper pushing. When like I mentioned before last time, that the county clerk is responsible for the county records, like the deeds, the death certificates, birth certificates, marriage licenses, any county records. Those are responsible. That responsibility falls under the county clerk. And as I also mentioned last time, the district clerk, they also record the documentation from the various district courts that are here in the county. So you can make an argument that those people probably, that politics isn't really a big part of their everyday jobs, right? They're just basically in charge of the documents, right? So do they really need to be political when it comes to running for their positions? And of course, you can make an argument that it's not something that really is all that important, right? So those party labels don't make a difference in those administration of duties, because a lot of these positions are very mundane, right? A lot of these positions don't involve getting involved in politics, right? So that's basically what the book is talking about, that a lot of these county positions, they just do their job, but yet they still have to become a part of the political process. They still have to run for these offices, and I've gone to some of these some of these town halls, some of these debates at the county level, where we have some of these people running for these these office type of positions. And what they talk about usually is because it was one of the debates I went to was involving the county clerk, and the issue that was brought up was the speed of service, right? So this other guy who was running to become the county clerk, he was talking about how he had some bad experiences with the wait times and the confusing nature of the way the county clerk's office was set up. So it wasn't necessarily a political issue. It was just he was running for it because he wanted to change how the current system was run to make it more user friendly, so to speak. So it was more so, a disagreement with the job that the county clerk was doing, not necessarily about a political issue. So keep in mind that when we look at county politics, okay, so we got some more people showing up. So just keep that in mind that when we look at that's what it's talking about in terms of partisanship, that the county politics, that a lot of this stuff doesn't necessarily have to be partisan, even though it ends up becoming partisan. Also keep in mind that, the precincts, every precinct is going to have its own unique circumstances and issues. What's going on over here on the western side of Hidalgo County in Precinct 3 might be different from the eastern section of the county in Precinct 1, right? There might be, there might be more roads and some of the, more county roads. Some of some of these precincts might have more rural areas than the others, right? And you also tend to see this in more like, some of these more populated counties, right? Where, you might have a county where like you've got like, or maybe like a less populated county, right? Where you got like one city and then the rest of it is rural areas. So the way the precincts also are set up, you also can see those differences. And every commissioner is going to be different in terms of how they do their job. And then of course the long ballot, all the county officials discussed earlier in this chapter are elected. So that's why, when we're going to have this next upcoming election here, especially in the primary season, because keep in mind that in a lot of counties in Texas, whether it's the blue counties in South Texas or the red counties, in rural Texas, that the two political parties usually aren't that competitive in the general election. What I mean by this is that the real election that's going to happen in, like, let's say an overwhelmingly red county or an overwhelmingly blue county is going to be during the primary election when you have the Republicans competing against other Republicans and Democrats competing against other Democrats, right? So because Hidalgo County is more of a blue county, the way it's going to work is that the Democrats are going to be the ones who are going to dominate the political process at the local level. And so what happens then is that you might have a few Republicans that might run, for some of these positions, such as, for county judge as well as for sheriff. But a lot of these positions usually are run unopposed by the Democrats. Usually there's no Republicans that are running for county clerk or any of these county commissioners or things like that. It's usually just Democrats because it's a Democratic dominated area. If you go up north to some of these more rural counties in Texas, the opposite will happen, where there won't really be any Democrats running for these county offices. It's just going to be dominated by Republicans. And so the real election is going to happen during the primary, where you might have two Republicans competing against each other for the county, for the county judgeship, and then there might not even be a Democrat that runs in the general election for the county judge. So keep that in mind that in most counties in Texas where it's either red or blue, there's a few battleground counties, like I would say like Nueces County, where Corpus Christi's at. That one is kind of almost evenly divided between Republicans and Democrats. So those local races actually are more competitive in terms of the general election. But in everywhere else in Texas, the real competition is usually during the primary election. So just keep that in mind, that the long ballot does force people to vote for all of these different different positions like we saw here. So let me kind of go back here so that y'all can see, so yeah, you've got a listing of all these different these different positions they're going to be voting for. So keep that in mind, that can also make the ballots like extremely lengthy, and that could also dissuade people from voting because there's just so much of that they have to do and things like that, right? So the long ballot also can contribute to issues with voter turnout. Maybe people are kind of feeling a little bit overwhelmed with having to vote, for so many of these positions. But let's go ahead and let's continue with an evaluation of county government. So again, the book talks about how that there are some criticisms of county government, how county government, one of the major criticisms is the inflexibility here. So the inflexible structure, right? Keep in mind that, going back to the last class, what we talked about is that every county in Texas has to be administered the same way, where you have one county judge and you have 4 county commissioners, okay? That it doesn't matter whether you're in Loving County, which is the least populated county in the state with like 150 people, or Harris County, which has over 4 million people. It's not just Houston, but it's also all the other suburbs in the area, right? So Harris County versus Loving County still has the same setup, where you've got 1 county judge and 4 county commissioners. That's why I would hate to be a county commissioner in Harris County, because could you imagine like all the work you have to do compared to like some county commissioner out in a rural county? So that's why it's considered inflexible, and that is a major criticism, right? Should a county of almost 5 million people, should we only have 4 county commissioners and 1 county judge? where another county where it has more cows than people, they also have one county judge and four county commissioners. So you can see the point that the book is making in terms of why this is some people have would like to see more of a more flexible structure, right? So the inflexible structure, partisanship can lead to governance problems, right? So also keep in mind that partisanship, because these positions are partisan in nature, that they have to run as members of the political party. This creates a situation where are we necessarily getting the most qualified people, and that also leads to the less bureaucratic than other governments, right? Are we necessarily getting the most qualified people to actually serve in these positions of authority, or is it more so just a popularity contest with people winning these elections, right? And this isn't just a county issue. You also see this like in city elections. School board ones are also notorious for this, where because of the low voter turnout rate and because of the specialization of serving on a school board, are we getting the most qualified people to serve on these school boards, or is it because someone knows a lot of people and they want to try to get on a board to kind of get some semblance of power, right? So you got to think about those things, right? Are we necessarily, and again, this isn't just a county issue, right? This is more of a local government issue, because a lot of people like to talk about how, like I've heard some people talk about how, and we'll talk more about this when we get to the political parties in the election chapter, how one of the most common refrains that I've been hearing from people who maybe want to, support different parties, in local government because they feel like let's say, like an argument I've heard is that, oh, well, Democrats have been in power here in South Texas for years and things haven't really changed. The way I would see that issue though is that I'm not sure if it's more a partisan issue or if it's more of a local government issue, right? Because you could also make the argument that some of these places where Republicans have been in power for many, many years, they also haven't seen change either, right? So I don't necessarily believe that it's a partisan issue when it comes to people not agreeing with how government is being operated at the local level. I think, and partisanship does play a role, but I think it's more so the fact that local governments are much easier to to escape being scrutinized. What I mean by that is that, like at the national government, we've got newspapers that are keeping tabs on the president. You've got reporters that are constantly reporting on Washington. So you really can't get away. Like, if let's say you're in Congress, you really can't get away from the media. But if you're like a local school board member, who knows if you're ever going to talk to the media? Who knows if the media is ever going to conduct an investigation or an inquiry about what's going on with school funds or things like that. So the point I'm trying to make is that local governments, they can kind of be a little bit more obfuscated. They can kind of get away from the criticism and the scrutiny that you might see from the national media kind of gets, because the local newspaper can only do so much. But that's a whole other topic. But again, so less bureaucratic than other governments here because, like we said, you have these heads of these governments are all elected, so it's not necessarily the most qualified people that are serving in these positions is the people who can get elected. And then, but there are some benefits to this, though, right? They're highly responsive to public demands. And again, and this goes back to because local governments tend to be closer to the people. They tend to be, it's much easier to get a hold of, like someone working in city government. Like I know I like to use the example that several years ago when I had that issue with this embroidery shop that was running this air compressor to what they were doing. I think I mentioned this before, right? I mentioned to you all that there was this embroidery shop across the alleyway from where I live, and they were running this like the water pressure to spray out the paint, and they were running this air compressor to power that, and that air compressor just was going on nonstop all day up until like 9 or 10 at night. And so I was complaining to the city for years about this, and then finally one day the city manager showed up and he actually caught them in real time. He heard the noise that was being made, and so he went and talked to them. And to put a long story short, that was never a problem again, right? So they can be very responsive to the public demands because of the fact that they are closer to the people. They're able to respond to those inquiries a lot faster because they're right there in the city or at the county level, as opposed to like someone in Austin or Washington. So that is a good benefit of county government and local government in general, right? And of course, the grassroots politics also, as the book talks about, that because these are more local races, you can definitely, it's much easier to organize and try to get change to happen more at the local level because, well, for several reasons, right? Because you don't need to organize as many people to organize for local government because it's a local election, so there's not going to be as much voter turnout. So it's much easier to try to win these elections through grassroots local organizing because you don't. It's not as much that you have to do as opposed to organizing at the national level. That is much harder. Okay, management practices. Okay, so the last bastion of what's called the spoils system. Now, going back to what I was saying, remember how I mentioned that some of the issues that people might have with local government, some people might say the local government's corrupt and that it's not really helping people. Well, one of the reasons for that is because of the spoil system. The spoil system is, if you've read about it in history class, you'll know that the spoil system, to the winner goes the spoils. And spoils, we mean it in a good way, right? Like, the winner gets the power, right? You probably also heard a variant of the golden rule, like whoever has the gold makes the rules. You probably have heard that variant, right? So it's kind of like a similar system, right? That the spoil system allows for people who have won these elections to then take advantage of being in that position of authority. And so examples would be like, let's say, hiring people that they know, hiring their friends, maybe giving, one of their, friends, giving them an advantageous position by giving them a construction contract, and maybe there's some kickbacks going on. Unfortunately, there's been some incidences of that in local government, right? Because again, remember that the media is not able to keep tabs on the local governments as best as they might be able to do on the national side, right? So this creates a situation where, again, this leads to unqualified people and high turnover because they're not necessarily hiring the most qualified people, because some of these people that might get into these positions might not even be qualified for the positions themselves, right? I mean, what if someone gets elected to the county clerk's office, but they've never had any experience managing people, or they've never had experience meeting tight deadlines and working with a variety of different tasks, right? Maybe they don't even really have too much office experience, if anything at all, right? You would think that if you're going to be the county clerk, that you should know how to be able to like run a copy machine, know how to set up reports and categorize and organize things, right? I mean, not everyone is as good at that as maybe they should. And so when you're going to be the top level person with a large department like the county clerk's office, you definitely should have a lot of office experience, but it's not required. Now, some of these positions do require previous experience and certification, such as the sheriff's office. So if you're going to be a sheriff, you do have to have that current peace officer certification. In Texas, it's called a TCOL license. It used to be called TCOL, but now it's called TCOL. That basically stands for Texas, standards, law enforcement, things like that. The Texas Commission on Law Enforcement. I think that's what TCOL stands for. So if you want to run for the sheriff's office, you do have to have that certification, but not every position requires that type of specialization, right? So, and I've got some opinions about that. So we require certain specializations for one, but not for others. So, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. And again, decentralizing purchasing. So instead, what this means is that the purchasing is handled more so at the precinct level, as opposed to the county, the county judge-wide level. And then the county commissioners can also give some discretion in terms of how the departments that are within their precinct responsibility, how they can also purchase it. Basically what it means is that they're not as strict about the spending of money, so to speak, because in terms of that it's kind of done at the precinct level. And then road and bridge system by precinct again. So we're seeing more of that specialization, right? That the precincts almost act like their own separate entities, right? They kind of act like, it's almost like the county is divided up into 4 mini counties, more 4 sub counties, so to speak, right? And so the way the roads are set up in one precinct could be different from the way the roads are set up in another precinct, because they might not be spending as much money on the roads, or they might be spending it in different different areas. Again, this is an example of local government control, right? Instead of having a top-down approach, having the county judge telling the commissioners what to do, instead the commissioners have more discretion in terms of how to spend that money and what to do with those initiatives, types of things. So those are some of the issues, but also some of the benefits here too. Now let's continue here, right? So let's take a look at an evaluation of county government. So again, lack of ordinance power. The cities do have the ability to pass ordinances, right? We're going to talk about how an ordinance is basically a law that the city passes, right? So counties do not have that ability to pass these ordinances, and so that would go a long way towards providing more uniformity across portions of the county, and also allow for for rural people, because again, keep in mind that while the county is responsible for they are responsible, especially when it comes to like safety of people within the county. Keep in mind that a lot of the everyday responsibilities of counties operate outside of the city, right? So county roads that are outside of the city, law enforcement that is that happens outside of the city for the most part, right? Because cities have their own police departments, right? So the everyday responsibilities of counties usually falls on the people who live outside the city, right? The rural communities, right? So they that's why a lot of these counties don't have the ordinance power, because a lot of the people live in the cities, so there might not be too much to enforce outside if you don't have too many people living outside of the cities of a county. So that's one of the reasons as to why counties don't really have too much of this ordinance power. Recommendations. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the recommendations that have been made. So greater flexibility, such as to allow more flexibility in terms of how county government is set up, right? Maybe having maybe having the ability to have more county commissioners for larger populated counties, and have less county commissioners for counties that don't have hardly anyone living there, right? So maybe having more flexibility with the way county government is set up. Centralizing purchasing and unifying road and bridge systems. So this is definitely very important, right? So instead of, in the interest of, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess innovation, right? And speed and trying to, and efficiency, right? So in the interest of efficiency, maybe not have the county commissioners have as much of this discretion when it comes to how much should be purchased. Because purchasing is basically where the idea of purchasing is a company or an organization's ability to purchase its items, right? And the process that goes in there. And the way that works is you have the buyers that actually work for the companies. They're the ones who actually talk to the sellers. The actual the what's the word I'm looking for? It's the contractors, the vendors, right? The vendors. That's what I was looking for. So the buyers, who work for the company will contact the vendors, and then they'll engage in negotiation of price, and then they'll be responsible for drawing up the contracts, and then it gets approved by the supervisors. And so that's how organizations are able to purchase the items that they need, right? There is a lot of red tape to this, especially because government is, obviously, of course, they're not going to be charged taxes since they're a government entity. But with that being said, if we were to centralize that purchasing to where instead of having the commissioners basically are in charge of their own purchasing for their own precinct, but instead have it at a county-wide level, that would go a long way towards creating more efficiency, as well as unifying the road and bridge system, right? Again, the whole idea in terms of the criticism here is that instead of having the four precincts kind of doing their own thing, you have a system where it's being done unified through the vision that the county judge wants to work on, right? So, and again, and this isn't necessarily a good or a bad thing. We're just talking about if we wanted to create a system that was a little bit more efficient, and maybe maybe be faster with their work, type of thing, right? And maybe have not as much confusion. So that's what it's talking about here in terms of unifying the road and bridge system to where it's done more at a countywide level as opposed to just the precincts deciding on their own. And then cooperative delivery of services, again. So you can see that there's a theme here, right? That it's meant as a way to unify the it's meant as a way here to to unify the services, to not have to not have the different precincts kind of doing their own thing, and then of course, like we said, to allow for there to be that uniformity, right? And so prospects for reform, little interest in change from county officials, especially like in these really smaller counties. They're not going to want to give up that really sweet deal of having 4 county commissioners for a small county, because that means that let's say like it's a really tiny county. Let's say you wouldn't even need county commissioners. Let's say in a county that just has like I said, Loving County has like 150 people. you know, the logical thing to do would just to be eliminate the precinct system in general and just have the county judge be in charge of everything, because there's not really much to do anyway. But do you think those 4 county commissioners are going to be happy with giving up that position of authority? I mean, probably not, right? They're probably going to want to hold on to that, right? So the rural counties are going to definitely, you know, they're not going to want to change that setup, because they're going to want to hold on to that position of authority, because it's cool to have that, right? You know, so you could see like rural counties are not going to want to change that. The more heavily populated counties would definitely want to change that, but they would want to go in the opposite way, not to eliminate uh, the creation, not to eliminate the precincts, but to add more, right? Like I know, like I'm sure Harris County would certainly want for there to be more county commissioners, right? You know, 4 is definitely way too little for them, right? They would definitely want maybe like 20 of them, right? Maybe even set up like maybe like even a mini, like kind of like a mini legislative body, so to speak, right? Because of just how large, how heavily populated Harris County is, right? So that could be, you know, those are the exceptions, right? That the larger populated counties are definitely going to want more of those. They're definitely going to want more of those people there. So okay. So with that being said, let's see, because I know we're at the city government. Let's see. Okay. Special districts. Okay. So. Okay. All right. So let's see, because we're at 240. Like I said, I do have. Okay. Oh, hold on. Let me go ahead and stop the share here really quickly here. So let me go ahead and stop the share. Let me stop the record button here.